Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Shed Customs TV. And I thought I'd introduce to you a project that you might have seen as a series of photographs which I turned into a video. But this is 1936 Norton ES2 Special. Why would we call it a special? Well, I've sort of tried to create a Manx Norton replica out of it, I suppose. It's the first British bike that I've ever owned, and it's the first British bike that I've restored. Maybe I'd have done things differently if I had another, how long have I had it now? 6 years, 7 years. I might have done things differently. So there's a little bit of history to this bike. I bought it from a local guy who became a friend, a guy called Les. You might have seen him in one of my video shorts of him starting up his Manx bike at a local do. He advertised it. I went along and looked at it. It was in completely different state to this when I bought it, different petrol tank, though clearly it's not got a petrol tank on at the moment. And the story, or the backstory, was that it had been used for sprinting and hill climbs. Specifically, it had been used at Prescott, so I was quite keen on that. Right, another day, another dollar. So we were talking about the engine. So the engine used to smoke like a what's it, and wasn't sure what the problem was. But when we took the engine apart, we found out that it had what we think is a JPJ press to it piston, which basically had only 2 piston rings, no oil control ring. So we think that was the reason why it smoked so bad. So I went to a friend called Andy Savage, who's a bit of a renowned Norton engine builder, and we came up with a plan of using a Manx Norton forged piston with a high compression. We used the original aluminium conrod, so it involved some jiggery pokery. But what we found, or what Andy found, when he completely took the engine apart, was it had really been built very nicely. It had a scraper plate that was right against the crank. It had lightened valve gear. He said it basically had all the mods that he would tend to do to an engine had already been done to it. So it was a case of just working out, getting the piston to work. That engine went back together again. But unfortunately, someone who remained nameless, e.g. me, wanted to put a bigger carb on it. So it originally had a monoblock carb on, which I sold. It wasn't really a period correct carb, and although I didn't really, it just didn't look the part as far as I was concerned. I wanted a GP carb. I ended up putting a GP carb on it, but it's basically too big, so it makes it very difficult to start. It's a right bitch. And that's some of the reason why it ended up getting put away, really. It became such a sort of like a pain in the bum. It needed setting up. You couldn't really set it up because you couldn't get it started. You ended up laying on the floor panting and sweating, so it went away. And it's been in exile for probably a couple of 3 years, which is a shame, really, because when it was running before I touched the engine, although it smoked, it went really, really well, and it's a very comfortable bike to ride. It's different from the Triumph. I think these extra springs on the girder forks make the front suspension a lot more compliant than the Triumph's one, which has just got the single spring. So anyway, here it is. It's back in the fold. It's going to be used as a side project, so it's not the main build that I'm trying to concentrate on, because if you've been watching my other videos, you'll know that I'm building the 32 Velocette, and I'm also building the 1939 Rudge. So I've got plenty of things on at the moment, probably way too much. But I was hoping to use this as a bit of a side project and do some bits in between, waiting for parts or waiting for other things to happen. So some of the things I want to do, I reused the original rims that came with the bike, and although they were in fair condition, I got them powder coated at the time. Respoked it with stainless steel spokes and nipples. But I've never really been happy with that look. I know some people have got bikes with black rims, and that's fine. I've got no problem with that, but it's not really the look I like. So we're going to go for the flanged aluminium rims like I've got on Warwolf. We'll reuse the spokes and the nipples because they should all be good to go. The rest of it sort of focuses around ergonomics. So the brake arm is in a position which is not very easy to work, and it hasn't got a stop. So as you adjust the brake rod, the brake arm comes up as opposed to staying still, so you can actually adjust the tension on the brake shoes. So that needs to be fixed. On the gear change side, it's using a cut down gear change. The gear change is facing forward from the gearbox, so it's got the right shift pattern that I prefer, which is 1 up and 3 down, so that's good. But the foot peg position means that I've got the heel of my shoe on the end of the foot peg and almost the edge of my toe trying to change gear, which is not ideal because the gear change has been shortened, so it's probably takes more effort to change gear. So the foot peg scenario is going to go through a complete review. We're going to redo those, remake them, make them so that I'm happy. It's got the original pedal type foot pegs, which I don't particularly like, although there were a period and it looks okay. It's not really what I'm after. So it's mainly get the engine reliable and starting. The other thing, it's got this bike's got a doll's head gearbox. And it's a road gearbox, so it's got a kickstart shaft in, but the kickstart shaft sort of sits between the foot peg and the gear change, and what tends to happen is it gets in the way of your foot. So I'm going to take the gearbox to someone that's going to be able to take that shaft out, although I probably could do it myself. I'd rather go to someone that's done it before. We're going to remove the kickstart shaft, shorten the casing down so we've got rid of that obstruction, and then it will become a bump only bike. So the Velaset's going to be a bump only bike, the Rudge is going to be a bump only bike, and now this. So I'm going to get in some good training on how to bump start bikes, and I think hopefully it will be okay. We'll do future videos to see, but I think if you've got a bike that runs and starts okay and will tick over, or is competent at starting, then bumping it is just going to hopefully be just a technique of learning. The petrol tank that's obviously not on here at the moment, I bought a Manx copy petrol tank, and unfortunately the way it had been painted, the butterfly cap, which sort of like clips over the top of the tube that you put your petrol in, it was catching on the edge of the paintwork, and it peeled the paintwork back. And then when the bike's been in the van, so it's sort of petrol's been moving about in a way that maybe it wouldn't do on the bike, petrol's come up, it's seeped in between the between the paint and the steel, and it's basically got in and it's pickled the paint. So the petrol tank needs a repaint really. I suppose I could leave it as a patina look, but this bike is actually pretty nice. It's a restored bike, so it was in such poor condition when I got it that wasn't really a choice that I made to keep it in a sort of unrestored condition. Do I regret that? No, patina builds weren't really the thing back then, and I suppose I've grown to love that. But I do like a bike that looks very clean and tidy and well finished. So anyway, those are some of the plans I've got. Hopefully I'll bring you along on the journey, and I'll do a couple of shots around the bike so that you can sort of get a feel for what I'm talking about. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you at the end of the video or at the next video. Thanks very much. Next up, I'm going to take the left hand side foot peg off. This has been lock wide, or I've lock wired it up, and I'm also going to try and remove that that brake pedal while I'm about it. The clutch off the gearbox. Oh, need a screwdriver for that. That's a nice one that's actually threaded into the back of the clevis, so I don't know where that came from, but quite tasty. Try a different pair of pliers. There you go. Always happens when you use the right tool. And just put everything, all the split link back on so it doesn't get lost. This chain was new when I rebuilt the bike. Let me know what you think about this sort of as we do it video. You can see me fiddling and fumbling around. I don't know whether I'm going to put this to some music maybe, as opposed to this needs me whittering. Alright, same thing for the main chain. Right, dirty hands and dirty chain. Right, next up, you can take the clutch cable off. So just a case of taking all the slack out of the cable. Getting the slot to line up. Almost going to do that. Can't do that with one hand. Bring you back. Okay, clutch cable out. As you can see, the perch and the lever don't really match, so I need to sort that. I like levers that haven't got a ball end on them, so I put these levers on a different set of perches, and it's okay, but it's not great, so that's going to have to get fixed. So just a case of getting the slack out of the cable. I'm going to take the cable off. Right, clutch cable off. Right, we're getting close. So I'll bring you in and I'll show you how the gearboxes are mounted. So you've got in there, you've got that bolt, that's the tensioner, which basically brings the gearbox back to adjust the primary chain. Got some nice stampings on the back for the ratios for the gearbox and a number. And then at the bottom we've got a pivot bolt. Now the real thing you've got to be careful with Doll's Head gearboxes is this is a machine surface between here and the other side, so you've got like a fork that goes either side of the frame. If it's not a really good fit on the frame, you do the bolt up that pinches it and you snap the casting. So it's really important to make sure that that's right, and if it's not right, to shim it to suit. So we'll undo the bottom, we'll undo the top. I don't know if we're going to have enough room to wriggle it out here, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have to take the clutch off, so I might look at doing the clutch first. Don't want to scratch all the paintwork on the mudguard, and I don't really want to take the mudguard off if I don't need to. So let's do the clutch first. All coming back to me. So you've got a square in here, which happens to be the same as a 1/4-inch drive. So got the 3 adjusters which put the spring tension on the pressure plates. They actually upgraded to aluminium tubes, and it's got brand new springs as well as part of the build. And I've got to say, this clutch is one of the lightest clutches I've ever used. It's an absolute joy to use. You'd think it was the front brake on a push bike, it was that loose or that soft in operation. Absolutely lovely. So we'll take the opportunity while we've got the clutch out to give it a bit of a clean and a check over. Again, it's not done many miles since the last time, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get that out without taking any more. I don't really want to take it any more apart than I need to. So we'll try that first and we'll see how we get on. So next we're going to undo that, if you can see that. So let me give you another shot. Try not to throw the thing off the stand. Guess this bit's going to get time lapsed. Come on. Alright, let's get some hammers. So I've almost got this adjuster out, and this adjuster screws into the pivot bolt. A bit like the left bone is connected to the right bone and all that. So you've got that arrangement, so when that gets screwed into there, and then that allows it to be adjusted in and out. Right, so you shouldn't have too much left now. Just need to get that bottom pivot bolt out and work out how I'm going to move the gearbox gently. That's still quite tight, so whatever's going on, that bottom bolt is still clamping it. So let's get you around the other side. Oh, it's gone tight again. Why not? And take the pointer off. No, it didn't have a slot round it. No, never mind. Right. Okay. Well, I didn't switch the camera on at the right time, but there it is, laying on the ground. So the plan is to change this cover and get rid of this kickstart shaft, so that won't get in the way of your foot. That's the plan. That's why I've taken it off. Let's see how we get on. That'll be another video. I'm going to call a stop to it now because I'm getting hot and bothered, working in the sun, and we'll catch up again soon.